So we begin in Toronto, Canada today, where I just actually flew back from, was down there today. Verano Holdings, who became the latest Tier 1 MSO company to list on a Tier 1 exchange. This one, CBOE Canada, which now welcomes them into the CBOE ecosystem, which Aaron Miles told me is a great, positive for the company should we see rescheduling at some point in 2023. But nevertheless, this is a great move for them right now. But this is a Tier 1 company. We're starting to see, Anthony, more and more Tier 1 companies listing on these global exchanges. I think a good move for Verano and a sign of things, I think, to come for the overall industry, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I mean, I think Verano is one of the best names in the space. I mean, I'd probably put them as like a top 3 company, especially amongst the Tier 1s. This is just priming the pump for uplisting when we're actually on the back of any sort of regulatory change. This is good. It solves custody issues to an extent. They're now off of the CSE and onto the CBOE with global access to investors as well as global exchanges.
26 countries, like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is all a net positive. I mean, when I tweeted out this morning, a lot of people were like, "Oh, this is a nothing burger. This is a nothing burger." It was like, well, you guys are looking too short-sighted if you don't think this is nothing. This is a step in the right direction. And I mean, like we've always said, comprehensive versus incremental. I'll take incremental. These baby steps forward, as far as I'm concerned, it's all progress.
Yeah. Ben, this eventually is going to give them access on one exchange to investors in North America, Europe, and Australia, which is big markets, obviously, for cannabis investors, but access and transparency to major institutions, which they're definitely going to see. But a big move. This is the largest issuer in CBOE history. So I think it's a big win for, obviously, the exchange and I think for the company based on what they're going to have access to.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes investors who are in the shares already, they're looking for immediate moves, but I think this is incrementally positive for sure. It's not just the ease of U.S. uplisting when that becomes federally able. It's also things like small things that regular investors may not see, like CBOE Canada has a Match Now system that facilitates 15% of all volume in Canada. So it has enhanced access to ATS, which is alternative trading systems, and also dark pools that the CSE probably doesn't have access to. So they have different ways to facilitate increased participation, investor participation with index funds and so forth, and the things I just mentioned. So I think along with the ease of uplisting when that becomes federally able, I think this is a very good move for Verano Holdings, and it was holding up, pretty good today, better than the rest of the shares. I guess it dropped late day, but a good move overall, I think.
Timing is everything, and if we do see rescheduling, this is so turnkey. And even if you have a 2 to 3, 4 month window of opportunity where other companies trying to list, let's say on a NASDAQ or a NYSE, we all know in this industry, 2 to 3, 4 months is a long, long time because we know that these stocks will rip if we get some sort of announcement pertaining to rescheduling, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is all posturing for that ultimate move on the backs of rescheduling.
Yeah. One thing I learned today from Aaron Miles, he was telling me that about the transparency part, about like seeing who's shorting these stocks. A lot of it's international. 97% of this industry right now, 97% is retail.
Yeah. I mean, but that's
a huge number. I know it was big. I just didn't realize it was 97%.
It's the custody issue. If you're a financial institution, or if you're a fund, if you're a financial anybody outside of a retail investor, you have a compliance department.
Yeah.
They tell you what you can and cannot buy. I mean, I have friends that work for investment banks that can't even own cannabis stocks personally due to compliance issues.
Wow. That's about to change though, don't you think?
Yeah. Eventually. I mean, I've got buddies that have been trying to buy IPR for the last 5 years and they can't. Simply because it won't pass muster in their compliance department.
So all in all, the takeaway from this, good move, obviously, for Verano. Yes, guys?
Yeah, net positive. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's switch now to overseas, Germany, where the federal parliament is set to deliberate on a bill proposed by the federal government on controlled cannabis usage and related provisions on Wednesday, October 18th, 2023, which at the time of this podcast is today. Furthermore, the move suggests significant shifts in the country's stance towards the substance, which is currently illegal for recreational uses. So, Ben, break this down on what's going on here and, most importantly, what it means.
Yeah, it just means that greater changes are coming, and the recreational cannabis can incrementally come to Germany. So I think it's a positive on this end, and it will help companies such as Tilray Holdings, which has exposure there, and others that are prospective companies that are going to list as well.
Anthony, step in the right direction, don't you think? But at the same time, too, is this moving fast enough, or does it still seem like it's moving at a snail's pace?
I mean, it's moving relatively slowly. We've been talking about Germany for 5-6 years now, but I mean, what really caught my eye on this and why I wanted to cover it on the show is because of what the Bundestag actually said. So they basically came out and said, why are we going to fast track regulation? Because people are smoking weed anyway, despite it being illegal right now. They were like, people need a tested, regulated framework to consume cannabis.
Yeah.
People that are buying it on the black market, they don't know the THC count. They don't know if it's been tested. They don't know if it has pesticides and heavy metals. And I've always been a pretty vocal advocate of that is the biggest health risk for the cannabis industry, is people using black market product and not having any idea what the hell is in it. You think the guy out in Homestead that's growing black market cannabis is going to care about his consumers, spraying it with pesticides, heavy metals, testing it? No, it's not. I mean, you do put yourself in harm's way when you're consuming products from the black market or products from the street. It's as simple as that.
How about this story this morning with Verano? They actually went and looked at, not as a company, but one of the executives was actually in Manhattan and went to one of the illegal dispensaries there. And the place had been raided a half an hour before he got there. So the person was working the dispensary, said, I do have some product, went out back and came out back and brought out all this product in a garbage bag.
I believe it. I mean, I don't buy black market cannabis.
No,
I don't consume it. I mean, everything that I buy is through dispensaries. It's regulated and tested. And that's for a peace of mind. That being said, I mean, there have been hiccups in the regulated markets. I mean, you see cannabis also sometimes needs to be irradiated until it's actually approved to go to the point of sale. And it's not always the cleanest process or product, but there's still guidelines that are in place, and I at least know what I'm consuming.
Well, let's face it, as this industry grows, there's going to be a new audience, and maybe the people that have been consumers for a long time lean to the black market. But if you're going to grow, I think brand recognition, and as you said, you want to know, especially in this day and age, people 100% consumers are going to want that. But do we have any trend reports on how like the legal market is trending upwards versus, say, black market? Because black market is often said be lower cost, runs a tight business, but how the overall legal market is, in some ways competing against the black market. Like, are they winning the war, so to speak?
Are you talking about Germany or talking about the US?
US.
Or Canada?
US. What were you going to say, Ben?
Go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say we have dead data in Canada that's come out. I know what legalization it's 5 years into legalization. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But when it started out in October of 2018, so in the fourth quarter, the legal market only owned 22% of that market share. Now today, in the latest quarter, according to StatsCan data, that is 71%.
Wow.
So we've seen over a threefold increase. So in the US, it may be a little different, but I think the trends in states that have gone legal are pretty similar.
Good numbers, Ben. Never a dull moment in Washington where the chaos continues, where hardline Republican holdouts block Jim Jordan's bid for the gavel. The nation is now in its 17th day without a speaker, which is, needless to say, causing quite the logjam and having an impactful consequence pertaining to it. So, Anthony, you care to elaborate on some of those consequences entail?
I mean, it's just a joke at this point. It's a rudderless house, and the fact that this was a secret bid behind closed doors that basically said Jim Jordan's out, like that is the swamp. Like that's literally the reason that Trump and Gates and a lot of other people want to clean this out. But at the same time, like obviously hindsight's 2020, but Gates did this at the absolute worst time possible with what was to come, being in the geopolitical mess. But it needs to get resolved. I've seen Emmer's name floated out there today. I've seen McHenry's name floated out there today. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is not a cannabis story. This is a stability of the U.S. government story.
It is.
This needs to get just signed, sealed, delivered, put someone in, and let's go on our way. And that's not just so we can get aid packages out the door to the Ukraine and Israel. That's so we can just get back to our normal functions of business. in getting things progressing through the House as a governing body of this country.
Yeah. Ben, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's 100% true. It is mostly about it's a national story about encompassing all these different issues. It's not really a cannabis story. It only matters insofar that, banking bills such as SAFER that are going to be pushed in the Senate cannot move forward because they're bicameral in nature. So it needs that House support. And as long as there's no speaker, obviously it's going to be in flux and that won't proceed forward through the House. It can still be attached as an amendment as another bill. It doesn't necessarily need House sanction, but that's why cannabis investors are watching it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's this is an unprecedented situation. We're talking about McHenry maybe as an interim speaker until January, and obviously that's not what you want to see. Anything interim is not going to be very good for safe banking. That's going to take the back burner. But let's hopefully we can get this resolved. But it does appear that Jim Jordan is out. They had the secret ballot, and I think he had more nays than yays. So I think once and for all, we can see that Jim Jordan is out. And ultimately, this is a battle between sort of MAGA Republicans and what we call swamp Republicans or the uniparty Republicans. They're kind of battling each other. So like really outside of cannabis, it's really interesting to see the different factions within the GOP sort of going at war with each other because one supports Jordan and the other does not.
It is crazy how much this chaos is just manifested, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully it subsides sometime soon.
So we could be looking at going into 2024, so months from now, before we actually have a House Speaker appointed.
Don't hold your breath, but yes, that's a potential scenario.
If that does happen, we're talking about like a logjam 17 days in. Like, what are some of the consequences that you guys can think of that would be notable consequences if it is indeed that sort of timeline?
Banana Republic type shit. I mean, it's just going to be.
You really do believe that?
Yeah. I mean, there's really no other further consequences except for that nothing's going to get done. And the people that we voted to go up there are not going to do what they were sent up there to do.
Challenge,
especially on the peripheral issues. So they might get, major issues like initiatives like, aid packages to Ukraine, Israel, some of the things that have broad support, but things like cannabis banking don't stand a chance.
No.
Until there's a real, speaker in there who actually supports the issues. And the one good news out of all this is that Jim Jordan was rated an F by normal, and he's basically kiboshing any sort of banking bill or safe bank, cannabis bank, whatever it is, research. And he's no longer going to be a speaker. So if there's one good thing out of this, it's not going to be Jim Jordan.
We made a commitment not to talk about SAFE anymore. Mitch, the producer, you got anything where we can just squash that safe banking bill? I hate talking about it. It is what it is, but give me rescheduling. That's at the forefront because we've been in this topic for 10 plus years. And just when you think you've turned the corner, something else happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's now switch to an interesting story involving the SEC instituting a cease and desist proceeding against Anson Advisors, which is a firm that's been known to be a short seller in the cannabis industry located in Canada. In the proceedings, the SEC outlined that Anson is in violation of Rule 105 of regulation designed to prevent manipulative short selling in connection with public stock offerings. This is a company that many people in cannabis stocks know about, Ben. It's a firm that's been nothing short of controversy for quite some time. So how do you all unfold this, and what should people, I guess, interpret from this announcement?
Well, at least there's some enforcement action against Anson, who is probably the devil in terms of, or the most notorious actor amongst cannabis investors in Canada, because they were involved in all these purportedly unsavory events. For example, I mean, there are reports out there that say that they put members on cannabis boards just so that they'd have the inside scoop, and then they would short them. Predatory sort of trading actions in these stocks and all that. So all this is purportedly happening. The SEC got involved, and now we see that that they're going through cease and desist based on Rule 105, which is prevents manipulative short selling in connection with public stock offerings. So they're involved with all sorts of nefarious things apparently, and I think there's no real big takeaway other than the fact that Anson may not participate in some of these stock purported short sellings going forward if they are sanctioned by the SEC.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, he's been they've, Anson themselves have been the focal point of this, not focal point, but they've been known to manipulate. They've been known to have some ears to the ground and in an unsavory perspective. And I mean, I've heard some of the guys even walk around Toronto with security. I mean, that should tell you all you need to know. That being said, I don't really think the SEC carries too much weight across the border. So, I mean, I'd have to go and kind of think that this is a slap on the wrist. Hopefully something comes of it. I'm sure he'll get a fine, which most of these guys don't really care, as it's usually nominal to compared to what the rewards they're reaping. But it's good to see them doing something. I'd like to get bad actors out of this space as quickly as possible.
Yeah, like something like this. Do you think that there could be some sort of presence with them shorting, let's say, a lot of the American stocks, indeed, if they get listed on some of the bigger exchanges?
Yeah, I don't want to get into the whole conspiracy theory that there's a cabal sitting behind the scenes, like shorting the cannabis sector. I mean, I really don't think that's the case. I do think that you can do some nasty things on the exchanges that the cannabis stocks are currently on in terms of naked shorting, borrowing shares, doing all sorts of delta hedging and all sorts of different strategies. But I mean, no, I mean, I don't think that this is the puppet master behind the scenes that's shorting stocks down just to get low entries. I think he genuinely shorts stocks because he wants them to go to zero, not to get in on the long side.
Now, it's important to note that earlier this year, I believe it was earlier this year or late last year, they came out with a report actually recommending to purchase cannabis stocks. They found it very compelling.
Which I said I was like, this is probably counterintuitive. I wouldn't read into this whatsoever. They want to rip and then they'll short it back down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that assessment. But that was the first time that I recall that they came out with an actual positive, on the public record, saying that they were interested in purchasing cannabis stocks. So whether, that was, designed to boost it and in connection with what they usually do, shorting stocks or whatever, I can't speculate. But we haven't really heard too much from Anson other than that report. And that was a few months ago. So they've been laying low.
Yeah.
Very low, that's for sure. They were actually front of attention towards this industry for quite some time. But, in a lot of ways, it just goes to show that what we learned in the past, and I just can't believe the wreckage in the Canadian landscape in this industry 5, 6, 7 years ago, but how far we've come from that, which is actually a good thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, we had a lot of 10-car pileup, house on fire in the Canadian space, and I mean, now we've got US MSOs like Verano, GTI, Trulieve, TerraSend with their growth metrics. I mean, you've got companies that are approaching $1 billion run rates. These are very real businesses that have come out of all that. And I mean, you live and you learn.
Yep. And uplisting to bigger exchanges, which is great. Good to see for the industry. Yeah. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.